Hi, I'm Anna Young, and this is Diary of a Young Girl. I want to explain a little bit about my family dynamic today. So, I may have said it before, I don't remember, but my mom gave up my two brothers, my two older brothers, when they were babies to their father, William James Young. Now, I grew up believing that William James Young was my father. I wouldn't learn until I was 17 years old that he wasn't my father. But this man, William James Young, treated me like his daughter my whole life. So in my heart, he will always be my father. And I do plan on taking a DNA test at some point to find out who my real family is, but my father was always good to me, and so he'll always have a place in my heart. My mother, on the other hand, after she left her sons with our father, she barely had anything to do with them. Barely. She would call them maybe a couple times a year. Mostly she would see them when she was picking me up or dropping me off at my dad's house so he could babysit me. Um, that was the biggest thing when I was a kid, was my mom and stepdad having my dad babysit me. And when I was little, it was hard because Anthony, the middle child, he had such hatred for me because I had our mother and he didn't. And it was very hard. I remember being at my dad's house and, my mom calling and saying she was on the way. And I remember watching my brothers, and as much as they hated her, when they found out that she was coming, they went into this happy panic. They were like, "Mommy's coming." And they would run around the house, cleaning up, trying to make things look presentable, even though they were slobs. But they would, do all this stuff for her. And then she would come and she would spend 10 minutes with them. And then she would pick me up and leave. And so they didn't really have their mother growing up. And they hated her for it. They used to call her Fatty Patty. And Anthony hated me so much that when I would go visit, he would beat on me quite a bit. I would come home with bruises and everything. And Billy, my oldest brother, would protect me from Anthony. Anthony is just the bad seed in the family, I guess. And so Billy was always my protector, my oldest brother. But eventually, my mom would stop sending me to my dad's house because of Anthony beating on me, which doesn't make much sense to me because she let her husband beat on me, so why not let her son beat on me too? I don't know. I don't understand it. But that's the way it was. And then I remember when I was 8 years old, I was visiting my dad and I wanted to go for a walk. And he said, okay. So we get outside, and all of a sudden we hear this alarm going off from the corner store. And obviously somebody had just broken in or something, but there was this huge alarm going off from down the block. And the next thing you know, Anthony comes running up with a lunch bag full of cash. And he runs up to us and he says, this is something like, "Oh, look what I found on the ground. Somebody just dropped it on the ground." And it's this bag full of cash. And even at 8 years old, I was smart enough to put two and two together. So I said to our dad, I was like, "Dad, he just broke into that corner store." And my dad looked at him, and Anthony tried to deny it, but with the siren going off and crowds accumulating, my dad realized that I was right. So he told my brother to go back to the store, return the money, and to bring me with him. And boy, was my brother mad. So we walked down to the corner store, we went into the store, and my brother hands over the bag full of money. And the guy behind the counter was so thrilled. He starts praising my brother Anthony. He's like, wow, I can't believe you came back. And for you to come in here and admit to doing this, that takes a very strong, brave man. And my brother Anthony, no smile on his face. He just says, it was my sister. And so the store owner is still like, oh, but you came back with the money. He goes, I want you to pick out a candy bar to take with you for free because you stepped up and did the right thing. And Anthony just goes, give it to my sister. And he turns and he walks out of the store. He was mad about the money. So I picked out a candy bar and went about my way. So my brother Anthony started getting into trouble at a very young age, and so did my oldest brother Billy. My dad, as a single parent, he just didn't have control over them. They took advantage of him. They abused him verbally. They would call him names. They would poke him in the head. They were awful to him. And so he lost control and they ran the streets. And that's how they got into drugs and all other kinds of things. But occasionally, when I was about 9, my parents would occasionally have one of my brothers over to our house for a visit. And this was a very rare occurrence. Very rare occurrence. And so one day she had Anthony come over to our apartment on Nelson Street. I was 9 years old. And the visit went surprisingly well. Anthony was well behaved. He was polite. He had manners. And him and I got along. We played most of the day and everything went well. So well that night, my mom invited him to spend the night, which he agreed, of course. This was his mom that, hadn't really been in his life. So he agreed, and we were playing in the living room, and it was time for bed. And my mom and Keith were going to bed. And Anthony and I begged them to stay up later because we were having so much fun. And I even asked if I could sleep downstairs because it was my brother and we had fun. They reluctantly agreed, and so they left me alone with Anthony while they went to bed. Well, Anthony had found one of Keith's porn magazines under the sink in the bathroom and off the kitchen. And he was looking at that and he showed it to me and it sparked my curiosity. And the next thing I know, Anthony, my brother, wanted to have sex with me when I was 9 years old and he was 11. And I had never had sex before. I didn't want to have sex with my brother. I thought it was disgusting. I was terrified and scared. But he backed me up against a wall. And he overpowered me. and he raped me. 9 years old. He raped me. And I remember afterward, because I was sleeping in the living room with him, I cried on my pillow silently because I didn't want my brother to hear me. And I cried and I begged God for forgiveness because I felt like I had done something wrong and I was ashamed. But I didn't do anything wrong. I was not culpable in any way. These weren't two kids playing around. He raped me. And so, after that visit, my mom didn't have him over again. And it wasn't for 2 years that I spoke up and said something about it. I had come home from school one day and there was one of those after school specials on, and it talked about sexual abuse and how you had to tell someone. And so I went in after watching the show and I kind of tested the waters with my mom and was kind of like, what if this happened and what if that happened? And she coaxed it out of me, and I finally confessed what my brother did to me. And I have to say my mom did the right thing. I didn't know it at the time, but she called the police. And the next thing I remember was this woman coming to the house and asking me about that night and everything that happened. And then she asked me if I wanted to call my brother and tell him that he was in trouble for what he did to me. And I don't know if this was just a police tactic to see how truthful I was or whatever, but she had me call my brother right there with her in the room. So I did. Called up my brother, my dad answered. I asked to speak to Anthony, and he got on the phone, and I said, Anthony, remember what happened between us when you came to visit last time? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, you're getting in trouble for it. And he was just like, yeah, right, whatever. And I hung up on him. And I don't know if that's what the prosecutor needed, but he was arrested. Anthony was arrested for what he did to me. And he spent 4 years in juvenile detention until my mom got him out. And that's a whole nother story for age 15 when I get there. But yeah, when I was 9 years old, I was raped by my older brother. So I'm just going to leave that there for now. And I'll tell you more about it at another time. It's kind of hard to talk about. Anyway, today's Tuesday. Wednesday. Today is Wednesday. I'm at work and I just got up and I have to go. So stay tuned to Diary of a Young Girl. This is my justice. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye.